Awesome. All right. Well, where we're going to be picking up today is at the very bottom of page 68. And we are at the very bottom paragraph now about sex. And let me tell you, oh, I know, I can see some of your faces. Oh, no. And here's the thing. If you know what it's like when you're at a meeting and you know when you guys are reading through the book and it's like different people reading and then it goes, at once we commence to outgrow fear. And there is a long, awkward pause and somebody reads, now about sex. And then we have a giggle and we're all awkward and uncomfortable. We can feel this energy. And that's also why we have to have a look at it. You know what I mean? We come with so many like this is the area of my life, of our lives. I mean, you don't have to be roped in, but I just want you to know you're not alone. This is the area of a human being's life that carries the most guilt and the most shame and the most, I don't want to look at it. I don't want to talk about it. And as a result, this is the area of our life that has the greatest capacity to cut ourselves off from God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe. This is where we have the greatest capacity to cause harm. And this is why we need to get free of it. But I'm going to lean in with the awkward uncomfortability. And I'm going to I love it. I'm gonna kick us off with a joke. And it is a joke about the confused sponsee. So one day there was a sponsee, and that sponsee has fallen head over heels madly in lust. And that sponsee goes to, their sponsor and says, sponsor, it's true love. They don't know it's true lust. But the blue of their grippy socks matches the blue of their eyes, and their hair, it's the color of the AA coffee. It is true love. Be still, my heart. And actually, what it looks like is, no, it's real. You don't understand, Paige. My love for this person that I just met in detox is real. It's not a phase. It's not a phase, Mom. And so the sponsor, being a responsible sponsor, says, okie dokie, artichoke, which is how that communication happens. Okie dokie, artichoke. Here's what I need you to do. Before you take any drastic actions, what I need you to do, grippy, not drippy socks. So grippy socks, grippy. So if you didn't catch what I was saying, grippy socks are socks that you are given when you are in a lockdown type of institution to prevent falls. Detoxes, psych wards, any of my psych ward homies? Listen, I wasn't classy enough to go to a detox. They took me right to the psych ward. Yeah, we're on bottom of 68 for those that are like, what's happening here? We need to understand grippy socks. You can get them in blue, you can get them in yellow. I don't know if they come in other colors, but aren't they delightful? They prevent falls. And so it's like, oh, the blue of his grippy socks matches the blue of his eyes. It's true love. Green is an option. We got to listen. My true love. They have the whole rainbow palette of grippy socks. I knew it was meant to be. They can color coordinate with any outfit, Oh, we are learning all about grippy socks, and I am supposed to take us through this part of the book. Focus. And so the sponsor is like, oh dear goodness gracious, I've heard enough about these socks. What I need you to do before you take any drastic action. But by the way, if you're sponsoring other people and your sponsee comes to tell you that they might be interested in a relationship, just know drastic action has probably already been taken. It's too late. But the sponsor, being responsible, says, alrighty, what I need you to do is I need you to go home and I need you to read the directions on what we do about sex, about romantic relationships. Like, I need you to do that. And the confused sponsee, God bless, the confused sponsee is a good, active, listening, gonna do this sponsee. And so confused sponsee says, all right, what page is it on? And the sponsor's like, well, the most of what you're going to have to read is on page 69. That should be easy enough to remember. So the confused sponsee says 69. All right, 69. And goes home from the meeting and gets in their car. 69. I won't forget. And starts driving home. 69. I won't forget. Gets home or to the sober living house, wherever. Because that's what we do. And 69. I won't forget. Sits down, pulls out their book, and what page was that? What page? Ah, that's right, 96. All right, so let's kick this thing off. Let's go to page 96, first full paragraph. And imagine we're the confused sponsee, and we're reading about the directions for sex or romantic relationships. And the confused sponsee says, all right, here's what it says. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. Yeah! And listen, if all I got to offer is the multitude of colors that are available in grippy socks, we're going to end back in the place where we get the grippy socks pretty quickly. So, that is also why it is helpful to sit with our sponsees and do the work with them, as opposed to say, hey, just go do it. Because sometimes they miss the mark a little. Not you guys. You guys always follow directions perfectly. All right, so bottom of 68, now about sex. It says, many of us needed an overhauling there. So if we are here today and we're like, oh man, this is an area of my life that needed an overhauling. This is an area of our life that, man, we are really struggling. What I want you to know is that you are not alone. And again, this is why we're having a look at it. Where do most human beings have the most fear, selfishness, insecurity? Finances and relationships. That's where, you know what I mean? If you've been around here a while, you've probably written a lot of inventory around the finances and the romances. Ooh, that would have been smart if I planned that to rhyme. I didn't plan that. It didn't rhyme. Next time. All right. It says, but above all, we try to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off the track. So if you imagine like a horse race, you have horses racing on a track, and then a horse is like, well, like me, squirrel, and then off it goes. Now, horses are more likely to be squirrel and run away from the squirrel as opposed to towards it. Skittish creatures, God bless them, animals of majesty. But it's Bolton, and that's what it's so easy, especially when we hear like sex inventory. It's like, oh, you want to hear about some weird, gross stuff, and we're like, no, let's be sensible. That's what we're trying to do. It says here we find opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes, perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity for procreation. And so those are the voices that essentially what it's saying is like, it's bad. It's bad. You're bad. It's wrong. No. And then it's like, sort of that lie back and just think of baseball, which I don't know, they got some cutie patooties that play some baseball. That might not solve the problem. But that like, no, don't enjoy it. Bad. It's wrong. It's bad. Shame, 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 shame. So that is one of those voices, like feel bad. And again, I want to just contextualize. This is a book that was written in the 1930s, written in 37, 38, published in 39. And I'm burying the lead a little, but we're going to take a really healthy view of sex, relationships, and sexuality, like really healthy. So we have one set of voices that it's bad. And then here's the second set of voices. Then we have the voices who cry for sex, which I feel bad for the people who just joined. As I'm like, sex, they're probably like, connect to audio. Whoa, what? Then we have the set of voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage. Marriage, bad. No, don't do that, bad. right? I'm oversimplifying it. I'm overtired, and that's why. Who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. So it's like any problem that human beings had, guess what it has to do with? Exactly that. They think that we don't have enough of it, or it isn't the right kind, just obsessed. They see its significance everywhere. What do cigars really mean? Or ooh, the grippy socks. I don't know. That's not really a good euphemism. I'm trying a little too hard. All right. So it says one school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet. And I have made some visual designs for straight pepper diet. But what it's saying is that it's like the two extremes are like bad, wrong, no, yes. And then and then to the other extreme of like all of it right now, all the time, only pepper, yes. No boundaries, no forethought, no, just go, 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 go. And it's like, well, okay, I think we all have a feeling neither one of those is a helpful approach to take for most human beings. So it says, we want to stay out of this controversy. So you might expect a book written in 1930 or published in 1939 to be like, sex bad. Mm-mm. And it's saying, no, that's not what we're taking. It says, we want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. And an arbiter is like a judge. We're not here to judge or to be judgmental or to condemn anyone's sex conduct. But when we're working with people, what we do need to see, spoilers, I'm getting ahead of myself, we need to see is what we're doing hurting others. That's what we really need to see. It goes on to say, and this is a powerful and an important line, we all have sex problems. All have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. Not alcoholic, not alcoholic. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. That's what we're talking about. So it doesn't matter if we're a natural no flavor or if we're all pepper. That does not matter. We all struggle in this area of our life. We all do. That's part of the human condition. But again, to struggle in this area of our life is where we can cause the most harm, damage to, I love how Rob, I can't read all of what Rob put in the chat because I can't multitask that well, but I love how he's like, I need to explain the grippy sock thing for everyone. I will give you the definition of the word arbiter. I will give you the definition of what she means by grippy socks. Oh, God bless. All right. So it says we'd hardly be human if we didn't. Again, this is where we can be the most cut off from God, from others, and engage in things that like lower our sense of self-worth and self-esteem. So it says, what can we do about them? So we're going to have to do something. Spoilers, we're in step 4. It's going to be inventory, baby. Writing that inventory. So what can we do about them? We reviewed our own conduct over the years past. So we're going to have a look at what we did. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Now, I'll show you visually how I set up the page. I like to put whom I had hurt in column 1. I've done sex inventory a number of different ways. Sex inventory is where I'm like, all pepper, all the inventory, all the time. I love me some inventory. But the way that I'm gonna show you is a way that I've found to be the most impactful. I have done it where I've taken each question literally in order, but this is an area that I'll show you how I set it up. So for me, column 1 is whom had we hurt? It says, did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness. Now, when we talk about selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate, and jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness, we put that in column 3. So what is the pepper reference? Like I caught that question. So at the top of page 69, we were talking about how the two extremes that human beings go to in regards to sex, because we have the most hang-ups about this, and we're so like, it's like all of it, all the time, woohoo, is referenced as straight pepper diet. And no bad, only if you're married, and only if you're thinking about algebra at the same time, bad, 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 bad. And that is no flavor for their fare. And so it's saying those are the two extremes. Pepper is spice, and it's like we're only eating pepper. Bland is like that flavorless gruel. It's gruel. I was gonna say oatmeal, but gruel. And so when I was joking about inventory, I inventory straight pepper. I'm like, woo, inventory. I do all the inventory. That was the joke. You can tell I'm funny when I have to take 3 minutes to explain the humor. It's the sign of comedy. Explanation. Alrighty. So it says, so I put selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate, as well as jealousy, suspicion, and bitterness in column 3. It says, where were we at fault? I put that for me in column 2. I love the additional definitions that are being added in the chat. And then it says, what should we have done instead? Now that is going to be column 4. I'm just mentioning it so you can make a note. And again, I'm visually going to share this on the screen. I'm just going to talk about the next paragraph here right now. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. So if you're here today and you're like, why do I have to write down all my exes? Why do I have to write one night stands? What's the point? Well, the point is, because this is an area of our life that we often struggle the most, we need a sane and sound ideal, an ideal for going forward in our lives in this area. And it does not matter if you're married. It does not matter if you're single. It doesn't matter if you've sworn off. It does not matter if, it does not matter where we are in our life. We all can benefit from a sex ideal. And I'm going to show you how we develop it. And it says we subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? So if we are looking who goes into my sex inventory, we hold it up to the light of this test. Was it selfish? If yes, add it. Now bear with me. So we're going to have a look at all our exes, because of course we're going to have some selfishness in any of those. But a lot of times I'll work with people and they're like, but wait a minute. What if they were also selfish in the one night stand? Well, then we were both selfish. So write it down. Write it down. What we're not looking at, so I'll be real clear. What we are looking at is we're looking at relationships where we've slept with people because we were drunk. We slept with people because we were wanted money. We slept with people for prestige. We slept with people just because maybe we're struggling in that way. We slept with people so that people would like us. We're looking at, it can be helpful to look at a relationship with things like sex work and pornography, not in a judgmental way, but to see if that is where God has called us. There's nothing inherently wrong with whatever, but it's like, am I using this to connect, to disconnect from other people? There's this beautiful book. It's The 8 Points of the Oxford Group. And I am just a weirdo that likes really old, random books. And in it, he described, which is, by the way, this book I think would be around the same time as the big book. And he describes like the sin of lust. So bear with the religious language, but it's like the real problem is not treating one of God's children as God's children, treating them as an object. So if I've ever done that, put it on. Put it on. And then it said, we asked, and any time Yes, for drugs, absolutely. Slept with people for drugs, slept with people for booze, slept with people for absolutely. If you don't remember their names, you don't need to remember their names. And I will tell you, a hill that I tried to die on, but I'm not dying on that hill, is like, don't group. But we're gonna group. We're gonna group the one night stands. I know we are. We're gonna group the people we slept with for money, the people that we slept with so we could drink, the people, or drugs. We do that. We do that. I've stopped dying on that hill. So, yes. It goes on to say, we asked. And anytime it says we asked, that is a prayer. So we ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. Again, I'm going to show you how we're going to format this. We remembered always that our sex powers, which I'm going to say is a great name for a band. Welcome to the stage, our next performer, Sex Powers. Put your hands together. Yeah. I'm just going to throw that out there. Our sex powers were God given and therefore good. Therefore good. Neither to be used lightly or selfishly. So it's not just, do whatever you want, because we're not thinking about other people and how our actions could be hurting other people, but nor to be despised and loathed. Nor to be despised and loathed. So this is that God-given path where it's like we are going to treat this area of our life with care and respect, but we're not going to live in guilt and shame, like that God-centered path. So here is how I like to format the page, and this will kind of help it all come together. All right. So first and foremost, some of these you're like, oh, this is familiar. We've seen this before. These 4 columns, baby. So what I like to do is I like to put name first. Whom had we hurt? The X, flip the page. The other X, flip the page. You know what I mean? Write it down. If we have problems, if we find that we are not sure about whether or not we should look at our relationship with pornography, put it down. Or sex work, put it down. Again, not to be judgmental, but to see, is this where God is calling us? It might be fine. And if it's fine for you, amazing. If it's not, okay, well, God will show us. Like, really, it's going to be okay. And so once I get names down, flip the page, flip the page, flip the page. What I'm going to do is we then get into column 2. And I like, if you guys know, I love doing 1 column at a time. I'm really big on that. But when we get to sex inventory, I like to work columns 2 and columns 3 together. So we're going to start with, where were we at fault? And we can look at a number of different places. We can start with, perhaps, bear with me, I was a raging alcoholic and drug addict and was in no position to be in a relationship. I know nobody can relate to that. And I know that nobody can relate to hopping from one relationship to another and jumping in. You know how the joke about how do you know an alcoholic is on the second date? Well, they got their 2 garbage bags full of stuff in the driveway. That's how you know they're on the second date. We move too quickly, so we're not able to be aware of or respond to red flags. Maybe we're only getting into a relationship just because. Maybe we're using that person to make us feel better so we don't feel as poorly about ourselves. Maybe we're in a relationship because we think we need that to be okay. We think we need to be married and have kids, and we're just going with whoever we can go with. Maybe we're, using sex to treat the spiritual malady and to treat how we feel on the inside. We want to look at, where was I at fault before? Where was I at fault during? And where could I be at fault after? So what happened during? Was I lying to them about my alcoholism? Was I lying to them about my drug use? Was I hiding things from them? Was I cheating? We can look at things like infidelity, like full-on infidelity. We can look at codependency. And that looks like I made the other person God. I put them in the position of God. I put them in the God chair. And you know what they stopped doing? Stopped being a good God. So I had to boot them out of that chair so I could sit in the God chair and I could fix them and get them back to fixing me. Anyone relate to that pattern? um, we can look at things like abuse. If we were abusive in the relationship, physically, emotionally, sexually, financially, we can look at that. Now, if we weren't the abuser in the relationship, and there have been times where I was not the abuser, I was being abused in the relationship. For me, it was really helpful to look at why I stayed, because that's not the person that I wanted to be. And I know going into a relationship, I never wanted to be treated in a certain way. And I was like, those girls that stay, I'm never going to be like that. Why did I stay? And why I stayed often has to do with that codependency or that enmeshment, where it's like it's not two healthy people in a relationship. It's two unhealthy people that are like, you can't separate them. We can look at not communicating, not setting, maintaining, and respecting healthy boundaries. We can look at things like, if we have been in a relationship for a while, we can look at things like, not being diligent in the program of action. We can look at causing harm again and again. And if we're looking at behavior around porn, we can look at where we've been having one night stands. Like, is there a possibility that we might have been treating people as objects, or people as, another way to look at it is like vending machines. Like, I would like to feel happy, so I'm going to push B6 and get in this relationship, or, that validate me, fix me, that sort of thing. And I know you guys are always good at ending relationships in a healthy way, but sometimes we have that push and pull and back and forth and, on again, off again, or we keep those, I call them the tendrils, this little tendril of the relationship. Even though it's over, I'm going to keep my little hook in case I need them back, Did I ghost? Oh, I used to ghost. Not cool. Did I do any? So that's kind of the stuff we can have a look at. Now, once we get the second column done, we can then use the third column to help expand on this. So I will point out, it does not say, was I selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? It says, where was I? So I can look for additional ways in which I could have been selfish in the relationship. Maybe I was putting the other person down. Maybe I was controlling. Maybe I was only thinking of me. Maybe I know what it's like to get into a relationship just to be seen as somebody who's in a relationship. I was focused on what I could get. Maybe I was inconsiderate of them or their feelings. The dishonesty, that can hit like full-on infidelity, but it can also be, if we're using and drinking, I'm probably hiding that. I'm probably keeping that a secret. It can also be those walls and masks that I have in a relationship where I'm not communicating. I know nobody knows what it's like to be in the middle of a relationship and be like, they have not read my mind. All I would like is for them to figure out the boundary that I would like to set and for them to like it. Oh, is that too much to ask for them to psychically get there? Crazy. And then we can look at that in consideration, where we're not considering them, their feelings. Maybe because we're doing repeated harms, or maybe they're sharing with us things and that we are dismissing them. Maybe we're not prioritizing their feelings or not being considerate of their feelings. Maybe we're somebody that can be really reactive, or maybe we're somebody that doesn't share things. And so again, we can look at those ways that we have been inconsiderate. And when we look at, have I unjustifiably aroused? So what we're looking at is, did we unfairly create jealousy, suspicion, and bitterness? Now I can create that in like 3+ people. So I can create that in me. So did I unfairly create jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness in me? Now, here's the thing. A lot of times, if we're doing things we shouldn't be doing, we often project that on another person. So was I doing things I shouldn't be doing, and as a result, I was assuming that they must be doing it too? We can also look at, if we're somebody that goes from relationship to relationship to relationship, and typically unhealthy relationship to unhealthy relationship to unhealthy relationship to unhealthy relationship, have I gone from one of those again and again and again? And I'm repeating that same pattern of somebody who is unhealed and always unfaithful. It is wild, the lack of decent, upstanding men that I came across in the crack house. Not that I was a decent, upstanding woman in the crack house, uh, but I'm like, why are they treating me like this? Sure, you met them in a crack house. So could that be where I'm creating in myself jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Now I can also create this in the person, and I can do that with trying to, by any infidelity will create jealousy or suspicion. And there's always that question of what if they did not know? And what I always say is whether they knew or not, if they would find out, would they feel that way? Write it down. Would my actions, if known, create jealousy or suspicion or bitterness? Write it down. But that jealousy and suspicion could be things like when we're feeling insecure in a relationship and we're doing things to make them intentionally feel jealous, or we're putting them down. Or again, I'm like hiding my drinking, hiding my drug use, or just living in a way that I needs to be kept a secret. Um, the bitterness. Now, the bitterness obviously would be caused by infidelity, but we can also look at like where we create repeated problems or repeated harms and we don't amend them, or we don't change our behavior, or we don't listen and really hear what the person in our life is. We constantly ignore what they're saying or their wants or their needs. That would cause bitterness. And so that's what, and it's real, man, these steps work in such a beautiful order because in resentments we begin to see like a lot of, if we have our exes, we can throw a lot of what we've seen in the fourth column into column 2 and 3 of sex, and we can see that where we've caused harm. And and by the way, many of us have fear in this area of our life: fear of being alone, fear of being single, fear of being in a relationship, fear of sex, fear of intimacy. Those are different. Uh, and but we get to fear of sex inventory. We can work on that, and we get to have a new experience. And we get freedom from that fear, and then we have a look at this inventory, and we'll see, what we're seeing is we're not seeing about it's not, I think, what people are afraid of, like you want me to tell you what I'm into. No, we're really having a look at where are we causing harm? Where are we blocking ourselves from God? Where are we hurting God's kids? That's what we're looking at. And so we're not looking at where we have been sexually assaulted or sexually abused, nothing from childhood. We're looking what we have done. The only exception to that is a lot of times there is sexual assault in a relationship. That does happen. And there are times where if we're the victim of that, it's still important to have a look at. And just like with abuse, I don't deserve abuse. It's not right. But it can be helpful for me to see the patterns of what allowed me to stay. What allowed me to stay. Because that's been my experience. So we have a look at all of that. And then I always love to pray before I get into column 4. I love me my prayers, my 3.5s, throw in that prayer. And this is a perfect prayer because it says, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. Because that is what we're going to do when we get into column 4. The fourth column is what should I have done instead? And so I get into that. And how we get it is we take what we wrote in column 2 and column 3 and flip it. Bear with me. If I was selfish, I should have been selfless. If I was dishonest, I should have been honest. If I was inconsiderate, considerate. If I unjustifiably aroused jealousy, suspicion, and bitterness, what should I have done? Is I should have built love, trust, connection, and communication over time. Other examples is like if I was a raging alcoholic, spoilers, I was, uh, is that I needed to be sober. And to be sober, I need to be fully engaged in the 12 steps as a way of life. If I was engaging in behavior that I had to keep a secret, no actions that should be kept a secret. If I was going from relationship to relationship, or if I was engaging in relationships with people who are already in a relationship that's closed, I'm not supposed to be doing that. What I can say is, and I like to phrase it in this way, where it's all parties need to be emotionally, physically and spiritually available to be in a relationship. So if they're with somebody else and it's a close relationship, they're not physically available. If they just got out of detox and they're sporting their grippy socks, they are not spiritually or emotionally available to be in a relationship. That's the discernment. It's also, I actually speak quite a lot of discernment, which discernment means to use our judgment without being judgmental. So, Mr. just came out of detox. There's nothing wrong with him, but I need to leave him alone. I need to leave him alone to give him a chance to recover. And one of the things that can be really helpful in column 4 is to write that that I need to make sure that the rooms of 12-step are a safe place for people to recover. That can be a helpful thing to write, especially if we've struggled in relationships in the rooms, which that can get messy and be incredibly damaging for others. I also I know it's like Evel Knievel. I'm like off a ramp into a relationship. Well, what we should do is we should take time in a relationship, build love, trust, connection, communication over time, which allows us to be aware of and to respond to red flags. That responding to is also important because when you got those rose-colored glasses, those red flags just look like flags, baby. It's a carnival. Speaking of that, I was just speaking on that at the Howard study. If I was inconsiderate, I need to be considerate, thoughtful. I need to build communication over time. If I was using people, I need to see what I can bring to people, treat them as human beings. If I was codependent, I need to be God dependent. I need to have God at the center of my relationship. I need to be actively engaged in these 12 steps. If I've caused harm, I need to make it right. If I'm ending a relationship, I should do so kindly, respectfully. Many of us, cut the tendrils, cut those, nope, leave them be, right? I need to practice honesty, practice communication, and see communication through the lens of cooperation, the ability to set, communicate, and respect boundaries. To show up with that humility, that compassion, that understanding. If I tore somebody down, I need to lift them up. If I've not been a safe place, a safe person, I need to actively cultivate safety. So those are just some examples. And from those repeated, like writing on those in the 4th column, that begins to develop and deepen and shape that sex ideal. And that's what we're trying to do. So the more we see those things, the more those things become a part of our sex ideal. So it talks about actually I'll talk about our sex ideal because it says whatever our sex ideal turns out to be. Bottom full paragraph on 69, we must be willing to grow toward it. So our sex ideal, I'm going to say something is probably not the weirdest thing that I've said, all big book study. But what I will say is a sex ideal is a little like a resume. Bear with me with that. Do not print it off and hand it out to potential relationships. Don't put it on your Tinder profile or do whatever. Do. I'm not the boss of you. I'm not the arbiter. But it is not about the other person. It is about who I need to be before, during, and after a relationship. And it is meant to change over time. It is meant to grow over time. The sex ideal that we have when we're single and new in recovery is hopefully going to be different than when we're single and have a little more experience, which is going to be different when we're in a relationship, which is going to be a little different than when we're, maybe 6 months into a relationship, maybe a year into a relationship, maybe engaged. It's going to be different when we're married. It's going to be different when we're married and have kids. It's going to, and if that's the path your relationship takes, it doesn't have to. I know that's sort of a traditional way. But it is meant to change over time. And part of where it's meant to change over time is we ought to be living up to some of this stuff. So that's where it's meant to change. So a sex ideal is not meant to be a static thing. And in my experience, it is not useful if a sex ideal is kind of a one word, just throw it out. Yeah, they got to be healthy, or only sex when I'm married, or it's got to be in a relationship. That's actually not helpful. In my experience, working with a lot a lot of alcoholics, a lot of drug addicts, and I really do mean from a variety of the human experience with this area of our life. There are some people where sex is especially troublesome, and it needs to be a little more hardline. No, no. uh, but for most of us, it's going to be a little bit more in depth. Now, when it talks about whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. There was this other Oxford group book, and I can't remember the name of it. I made a note of it in We Agnostics. But in it, she was talking about an ideal. Oh, I found it. It's The Guidance of God. It's on page 7. You don't need to know any of this. This is me going on an old-timey book tangent. Girl, are you writing a whole lot of inventory? I am, but it might not be sex inventory because I'm really into these Oxford group books. But in it, she said, belief without power are merely ideals. So an ideal in and of itself, there is no power in the ideal. What I do when I work with sponsees, and I sit with them as we go through their 4-step, and I write what I hear them say from the 4th column of sex inventory, what their ideal is. I write it out and I give it to them. And then if they take that ideal and they put it on the shelf, actually, to be fair, a lot of times I have to take the picture and send them the picture of it because we're not really in person. Zoom's great. But if they put that on the shelf, there's no power in that. It's just collecting dust. And keep in mind, many of us had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but we could not live up to them, even though we would have liked to. I can't live up to them on my own power. I can't just not, or I can't just communicate, or I can't just whimsically, although I do most things in my life with whimsically put God at the center of my relationship. I just can't do that. So what I've learned to do is I ask my sponsees, and I ask them to type it out for me. So they type out their sex ideal. I write it out. I give it to them. I ask them to type it out as a prayer. And then what I do is I make a fun little pretty thing with all of it as prayers that they don't use, but with the intention for them to use it and pray on it on a daily basis. Hold on, we got a question. Yes, absolutely. Could not having sex be construed as a sex problem? Yes. And actually, that's a yes, and that is a wonderful question. I remember I did Steel on Steel for many, many years, and we would always get a new person in Steel on Steel, and we would get to in Steel on Steel, there's a series of questions, and where you get rigorously honest about struggles that you are having living a spiritual way of life. And we would get into this place where it's a question that's like, do you have sex problems? Would your partner agree with that? And inevitably somebody would be like, I'm not having sex, therefore I don't have sex problems. And they would always get a consideration, which is it possible that not having sex is a sex problem? But I also want to be clear, I'm not painting everything with a broad brush. There are times in our life where it is a season. It is a season where it's like I'm not interested. We're not open. We're in a period of growing. It's not black and white. But if I want to, and there are times where us not getting into relationships is the result of trauma, and there's some healing we have to do, or spiritual work that we have to do. And so it's not black and white. If you're married, that doesn't mean you don't have sex problems either, you know? Oh gosh, you're not okay. There's a couple questions. So am I really stupid that so first off, no, you be nice to you. We love you. That you don't know what Steel on Steel means. No, of course. I didn't give it any context. Most people in the meeting probably like, what is Paige on about? What the heck is Steel on Steel? Steel on Steel is a spiritual exercise that was created by an AA speaker, Mark Houston. And it is where a group of 3 to 4 people get together. We did it once a month, and we hold each other. I'll get you the recording, girl. We hold each other spiritually accountable. and you talk about, you get together, you pray, you meditate, and you share about, here's where I was in the circle, here's where I was in the triangle, like circle and triangle, here's my prayer, meditation, and here's my work life, here's my romance life, here's my this life, you know what I mean? And we lay bare and we receive consideration from other members of the group. Is it possible? Would you consider? And then you take that to prayer and meditation over the month or the week. Yes, absolutely. See, yeah, people were Googling it. I assume that people have heard me a whole bunch and they're bored of the things that I say. And they're like, yeah, Paige, steel on steel, swing, swing, ting, ting. We used to do that when we were in steel on steel. We go, swing, swing. It's a little like pew, pew. Uh, so what we can look at is that idea of, and so what would happen is we would share, like, here's the struggle, and people would comment on it. And so, but I want to offer, again, it's not black and white. If we don't want to be in a relationship and we're good, amazing. That's okay. A sex ideal is still important because you'll notice a lot of what I was talking about in the fourth column is just how we should treat other people, with kindness and respect and pump their tires, and God should be at the center of my life. And I know nobody knows what it's like to seek our sense of value and worth from another human being. Perpetually. But it's like I actively and intentionally seek my sense of value and worth from God, and I channel it to others. That doesn't that change how I show up at work? Doesn't that change how I show up with family? Like, it's so, even if you're like, and I do hear, if you're wanting to be in a relationship and you're struggling to be in a relationship, or you're wanting to have physical intimacy and you're struggling to have physical intimacy, that can be a problem. And in my experience, sex inventory helps. I know it's like, it's not a typical, it's like, I'm having problems in the bedroom and I show up, I'm like, let's write inventory. It's like, that's not what we were hoping for. We were like, get a feather or something. No, let's write inventory. And because it's about who I need to be. Because if I want to be in a relationship, but I'm finding I can't do that sex inventory will help me see who I need to be. And that sex idea will help me see who I need to be before, during, and after a relationship. So yes, we utilize this inventory. Yeah. And again, friends with benefits. So it's friends with benefits is, yeah, I'm not saying it's bad or wrong. If you are struggling with it, write inventory. If it's going well, you're probably not going to write inventory anyways. You're busy having a good time with your homie and the benefits. But yeah, and many people do struggle with that because it's hard. I will say it is hard to have physical intimacy without other forms of intimacy. And also, by the way, in a relationship, a fourth column that is very, very common is cultivating various forms of intimacy in a relationship. There's more than just the one. I know, I'm blowing your mind. Like emotional intimacy, talking about anywho. And then if you were refusing sex because you knew that you were being manipulated, that's not a sex harm. But if we're being manipulated in a relationship and we stay in the relationship, it might be helpful to have a look at why we're staying in a situation that we know is not good or helpful for us. Yes, and unfortunately, Corinna's tortoise does not have opposable thumbs, so it's a little hard for that boy to write inventory on the potato that he loves deeply and passionately. Alrighty. Gosh, I do not know where the time went. So with the ideal, it does not do any real purpose to just have an ideal that we don't do anything with. And what I've found incredible, like, I can't live up to an ideal. There's no power in the ideal. Where is the power? The power is in God. Higher power, creator, spirit of the universe. That is where the power is. And so I take that sex ideal to prayer. God, I pray that I would have you at the center of my life. I pray that I would build love, trust, connection, and communication with this person over time. I pray that I would seek from you my sense of value, esteem, worth, and that I would channel that to others. I pray that I would be honest, especially when it's hard. I pray that I would approach communication through the lens of cooperation and that I would treat it as a practice. I pray that I would treat this other person or all other people as your children with love and care and respect. I pray that I would lift others up, that I would pump their tires, that I would support them. And we do that on a daily basis. And we can also take those lines and we can work them as a meditation, and we can meditate on those. So for me, the sex ideal is not a static thing that's over there. It's an active thing. I want to move with it. I want to pray with it. I want to meditate with it. And in so doing, we begin to live up to it. Now, I love this paragraph. Whatever our ideal, we get to develop. It's ours, but it doesn't come from. Man, I remember when I first got sober. He's still sober, God bless him. He used to do this joke about, like, I'm looking for the gal with the real big eyes. He'd do that and say eyes. So I was a bit of a disturber, and I would say, well, I'm looking for the guy with the real thick wallet. That was my unspiritual return surf. But that's not what the ideal is. It's about who we need to be, and we get to cultivate it, not through what we think, but through this inventory, and it becomes so clear. And again, I've worked with human beings in the whole spectrum of humanity and sexuality and relationship statuses. And there are some things that are pretty universal, like having God at the center and continuing to be sober by working the 12 steps as a way of life, and treating other people with love and care and compassion and respect. And so there are some commonalities. So it says we must be willing to grow toward it, and that's how we grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm. So if I have caused harm, I need to make amends. And that, by the way, that is annoying. There's a thing in Calgary. Yeah, as Corinna pointed out, must. It's a little musty in here. If I've caused harm, I have to make amends. Where I live in the world, there's this weird thing with some of the members of a local fellowship where I live in the world, where the men, and I don't know why it's the men are like, I could not make amends to my ex. And I'm like, but weren't you just talking to her? You could probably make, like, no, we never make amends to exes. And I'm like, but it says, that we make amends if we've caused harm, unless when to do so would cause more harm, still more harm in so doing. It's like, you're probably not a giant monster. Like, here's what I'll say. If you don't have a restraining order, you can probably make an amends. The restraining order is where we will respect that and not make the amends. Now, while I'm off on this tangent, I got 2 minutes left. I'm in the middle of a paragraph and a tangent. This plane is not a smooth landing, guys. It's going to be a little bumpy at the end. But if you need to make an amends to somebody and they're in a new relationship, sometimes it's like you leave them alone. And it's like, well, maybe. But if the amends is on our heart, we can also reach out and say, hey, I know you're in a relationship. I'm not looking to reopen things, and I want to be incredibly respectful of the relationship that you're in. I'm reaching out to see if you'd be open to receiving an amends. If not, I understand, and I will leave you be. I know it's wild. It's wild. We could just communicate. And I know that is a thing that comes up in sex as a sex ideal, like communication. It's mind-blowing. Communicating, saying what's happening, and listening when the other person is saying what's happening. Wild. All right, so we make amends. And then it says, in other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. And I love this. This is how we deal with our problems. We inventory, we make amends where we've caused harm, but also in meditation, which implies, not even implies, it's stating, I got a meditation practice, that we're doing that on a daily basis. In meditation, I got to do it. We ask. There's another prayer. It's almost like this is an area of our life where we need a whole lot of God's help. So in meditation, we ask what we should do in each specific matter. That is a prayer. And here's a sneaky little promise. The right answer will come. But with all promises, we got a little caveat. If we want it, there's a lot of times we don't want that right answer, but it will come if I'm willing to take that to meditation. So we're right at the hour. So next week, what we'll do is we'll wrap up sex inventory and possibly, depending on how we do for time, even get into step 5. And I don't do well for time. So thank you guys for joining. I'll stop the recording and we can wrap up with the Serenity Prayer.